Wow.
Wow, this is some really deep stuff.
I don't know what just happened, but something happened inside of me. Something snapped. Something.
I wasn't expecting that
either. Sorry.
It's okay. It's all right. It's beautiful.
Monster is like really small, but it had to become that to stop me.
And then the hurt child became present when you mentioned it.
And I didn't realize this until now.
There were things that I didn't remember until now.
Funny. I haven't seen that before.
It feels like I'm the monster. I'm kind of seeing images of things. Of a world where they can exist. This clarity brings all kinds of answers.
It's clear. She hugged me and then went back to her place, I guess, in my heart. Oh, it wants to come out. It wants to bippity boppity boop Cinderella me. She's melted into my chest. It's ooey gooey.
All week been finishing things, cleaning up more, started eating vegetables again last week. And it kind of just started happening. It's almost like I just finished going through a meditation session.
I feel light. When you hit that first joint, in the morning, and
I actually feel a lot more awake.
I think it's been a few weeks, right? Since we've talked.
It has, yeah. And I do feel like I've gotten farther, after having that. I feel like something got a little less blocked with just self-existing.
Yeah.
And that has sort of just turned into I feel like I've been able to do more things that I couldn't do before, so that's been nice.
Wow. Yeah.
Gosh, it's hard to really put into words because I feel
I get that. Yeah.
yeah. It's all this stuff happens and that so much is going on, and then you're just I don't know. I've been doing stuff and my brain has been different, and that's
right. Yeah. Yeah. Some things are more of a felt experience than a narrative that we can, easily pinpoint. So that makes sense.
Exactly. But I will say I've had some tangible changes in my relationships where I've been able to have these better conversations with people, and also that some of that is due to my friends also changing and getting more in contact with their own selves.
Right.
So that's really cool. And then it's also one each of those things kind of helps the other along. So
yes.
So yeah.
We're all in this together. Absolutely. It's all, we're all intertwined in these dynamics and our parts are with each other and we are with other people's parts. And definitely, that's great to hear that they've been, along on the journey with you.
Yeah. It's been there have been some struggles, but they've turned out in a way where it's I almost, even though it was hard, it's I almost don't regret anything because nothing bad came of it. So yeah. And I had the weekend to myself for the first time in a while these last 2 days. So I got some time to really just sit and not do anything, which is
Nice.
like, yeah, something that has not only been hard to find time for, but it's just used to be impossible for me anyway because sitting still just felt so bad to me.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah. If it's not a relaxing space to be in, why would we want to prioritize that for ourselves? You know, it's like
Exactly.
if it's going to be like a torturous place to be in, that's not something we want to prioritize necessarily.
Yeah. And then you're like, why would I be still if being still sucks? But then you finally manage to, and you're like, wow, like,
yeah,
you really needed that the entire time. So, yeah. And I
that's
guess
awesome.
I guess the last sort of update I'll add is that I discovered this. I was like listening to a podcast and I discovered this practice that was like this person was talking about like you write a letter to love and love writes back and it's like this you're finding this like element of God in you and it's like two-way prayer and I'm like, oh my God, this is literally just like IFS self that's talking about contacting.
Right. That's so funny.
I went into it knowing that it was going to be legit because of what I know about IFS, and I feel like it really did something, and I'm going to keep doing this practice.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love when I can discover that. That's so fascinating. You know, when previous trains of thoughts or modalities and things, you see the relationship with it to IFS, and everything takes on this whole different lens that we can apply to it and understand. So that's awesome. I love finding things that support, you know, just that access.
Exactly. Yeah. Like it's just, I don't know. IFS is everywhere. I see it. I see
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you for sharing all of that. I'm really happy that I get a chance to speak with you the second time and kind of, you know, get an update. That's great.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. Yeah. So I guess where I could start is just I guess where I've been today, which is that I'm kind of fighting with self. Like I've been thinking about like, oh, I want to let self in. I want to like sort of surrender to self and not get in the way. But then I come across this thought where I'm just like, if I just need to step out of the way and let self in, and self knows all this stuff that I don't, and self is just great and wise, and I just need to listen to it every single time, then like, what am I for?
Yeah. Great question.
Yeah, so I have this part that's just like, well, like, what am I supposed to be doing? I am for something, right? Like, I'm not just like self's little like stupid baby that it loves for no reason.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love this train of thought. Yeah.
And I know that that's not the case. Like, I know that intellectually, but this part is just like, okay, but really, like, show me, like, what the hell am I supposed to be doing? Because I feel like I'm always being told that I'm doing it wrong, like by other parts, by society. It's like all this talk of like, just surrender, like, but like, if I have to surrender all the time, then that means that I suck.
Yeah. And, you know, perhaps it's even heard through some IFS talk and literature and things, you know, it's picking up information off of that where, it's saying like, if self is so great and divine and, you know, wise all of the time, then what is my purpose and where do I fit in to all of that?
Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing is that when I have these thoughts and I'm like, come on, self, give me an answer, self is just like, keep talking about this. This is great. Keep going. And just like, that's not an answer,
Yeah.
but okay, I will.
Yeah, which,
That's like its
that makes
way
a
of
lot of sense.
showing me that I'm for something, I guess. Because it's
Yeah,
like,
and
okay,
it will.
I'm not going to step in.
It's so interesting that it's asking for curiosity in the situation, right? Like,
Yeah,
keep talking about that, or keep listening, keep understanding, keep
Yeah.
asking that question. That's a good question.
exactly.
It's encouraging that open, creative curiosity. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
that's great, and I'm sure that this is going to be something that we can touch on today. But I'm sure that answers to that question will evolve for you over time, right?
Yeah.
As you kind of understand this unique system that you have and where each part fits in for you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, would it feel good to have any minutes of meditation between now and turning towards this part? Or would you
Sure.
like to? Yeah.
Yeah, I could do a minute.
I will set a timer for a minute and we will touch back in.
Awesome.
All right. All right. That was about a minute.
All right. Hmm. I suppose this part is confused as to, there's kind of like a big general confusion of like, I don't even know what I want to know. I don't even know like what's
Sure.
even wrong or what questions I should be asking. But I guess a
Yeah.
place to start would be like I kind of want to know everything. Like I really want input from self, or at least I think I want input from self. But clearly, if I'm not getting as much of it, it means that I, on some level, don't want it or need to not have it right now. Because I'm just like, okay, self, tell me all your secrets. I want to know. And then self is like, it's like says nothing in response. And then I'm just like, okay, like what am I doing
Right.
wrong?
Right.
But then it's
Yeah.
like that's the wrong way to look at it. And it's like, what do I need? Is maybe the better question.
Yeah. And, I think it's interesting. We can recognize like an efforting
Yes.
in looking to self for these answers. In a way, we're blending with those parts that really want those answers and really want to help figure it out.
Yeah, because I keep saying I want answers, but I think what I really want is for me to get the answers and not be given them.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm like bothered that I can't just find them myself, that I need this outside, not outside, but like this, I need this divine entity or whatever to give them to me. It actually bothers me that that's something I need.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Especially from a part that's had to work really hard on its own and didn't feel like it had access to that. It's gonna, I could see how that would be a really hard truth to face.
Yes.
Like, what do you mean I can't do this all on my own? I've been doing such a thorough job of trying to do that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, like you said, in the beginning, this question of what am I for then? And what is my importance in this system?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's a really understandable question to ask.
mhm.
And what I'd invite you to do right now in this moment is just to see how that question lands in your body.
Okay.
From that part. What am I here for? What's my importance here?
Yeah.
And just notice where that might come up in sensation wise in and around your body.
Let's see. There's kind of like a dark cloud in my chest and like stomach area. It's not like the strongest feeling, but the thought that accompanies it is like kind of like I'm like, for lack of a better word, I'm stupid. uh
Yeah, that's the feeling
yeah.
that's coming up. Yeah. Yeah. And as you notice that, how do you feel towards that feeling and that expression?
I feel like that feeling makes sense. I feel like of course you feel stupid when it seems like everything you do is wrong. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can understand where it's coming from in that.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. You can let it know that.
Yeah.
And ask maybe how that's been for it to feel that way.
Okay. Well, I think the part where I'm still blended, I can feel like the self of like, yes, of course you feel that way. That makes sense. But then I feel like a little bit of blending in this area where I'm like, it's kind of a self-righteous feeling of like, yeah, I knew it. I knew I was right. I knew that you were like speaking to self. I knew that you were condescending me. Like, so that is kind of like, yeah, see, I caught you.
Yeah. Yeah. And what feels like a natural response to that? Or do you feel like you're able to kind of see that and hear that from just a little bit of distance?
Let's see. I feel like it makes sense. And I don't have any kind of answer for it. And I don't know exactly why I don't have an answer for it.
Yeah.
I just feel that it makes sense.
Yeah. And you can let it know that, you see that kind of righteous feeling and you're feeling that.
I think it's latching on to the fact that I don't have an answer for it. It's like, yeah, of course you don't. Even though yourself, you don't have an answer for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And is that okay with you to hear?
Yeah, it is, because it's a good point.
Yeah. And maybe self has some curiosity about this part and would rather hear from it than provide it answers.
Yeah. That seems like what's going on. But the part is kind of like, part is kind of taking that, like, oh, okay, you just want to like sit back and watch me struggle. That's kind of the response I'm getting.
Yeah.
Like what am I supposed to do here? What am I supposed to say?
Yeah.
Like you just want me to like continue to be mad about this, like I have been all day already, like, but there's, I don't know, the part doesn't seem completely furious or frustrated. It just seems like a rebellious teenager or something, like,
sure. Yeah.
like a testing self or something.
Yeah. Just notice how you're feeling towards that.
I feel good towards it.
Yeah.
I feel like it's right.
Yeah, what do you think it's right about?
It feels like this part, what is the word? This part is standing up for itself. And it's being honest. It's not being like, okay, self, as you wish. It's
right.
Yeah. It's
right. It's got a lot of valid questions.
Yeah, it's even willing to question, you know, God or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And looking back, I feel like that's been a strength of this part for a long time. And I actually feel like self has been appreciating that about it for a long time. I was actually thinking about today, like the long stretch of time that I identified as like a hardcore atheist, and how even though I believe in something more now, which is like I believe in self, and I feel like the atheist label only sort of fits when you believe that self is sort of a divine expression of something.
Yeah.
But I think self was encouraging me down this path of like of rejecting the God that people have tried to give me, because that's the wrong God, and I felt that was very important.
Yes. Yeah, the importance of questioning where we're turning to, what we're surrendering to.
Yeah, it was hard for these parts to go without some kind of guidance like that, but it was better than it was better than going by this external punitive guidance.
Yeah.
And sort of going by that inner guidance sort of was following a quote unquote divine path all along in a sort of way. Yeah. So
not wanting you to be led astray in that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So it sounds like you can really see the importance of this part and its job in questioning, the entity or the energy that it's being told has the answers.
Yes.
It's really important to question that.
Yeah, it's checking whether that the stuff that it's getting actually makes any sense to it.
Yeah.
And that feels important. but I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure exactly why, and that might feel weird to say because it might seem like I just explained why, but it's weird because I really do feel like self is it. Like, I don't really doubt that. And this part doesn't really doubt that. But it's still like,
It wants some proof, maybe, or some evidence.
yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah. I think that's really fair.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
And I can see how both things can be true, right? That there are parts of you, maybe even on some level, this part, that really recognize and feel the truth of that energy from self, but they also want to develop a relationship to it and build trust with it and really understand how it's going to interact with them and what it means for them in their roles.
Yeah. Okay. I think so this part is kind of like, okay, I believe in you. I'm here to listen to you. So why do you still feel so far away? That doesn't make any sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you could ask this part if it would like to be closer to you.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. It's kind of like, why do I have to be closer in order to see it?
Yeah. Well, I would say it doesn't have to be closer, but it has the option to be if it would like a closer connection or to build trust with you.
Yeah. No,
It helps.
agree.
Yeah.
It's just this interesting thing that it's doing of like I want to be closer, but I also don't want to have to move or do anything in order to see it.
So how would it feel about you taking a couple of steps closer to it?
Let me see. I think I do feel a little closer to it now. But it feels like there's maybe a limit.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm right at the edge of this wall that it's put up. And what exactly the wall is doesn't entirely make sense to me.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
You can still recognize that it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you could ask.
Yeah, I'll try to ask.
What that part would like you to know about the wall.
Yeah. It's hard because the wall seems like a kind of mysterious nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's information, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't feel bad. It doesn't feel good. It feels like it's like the only reason I even know it's there is because I know that I'm not very close to this part. So it's like a wall that hides itself, a wall that doesn't want to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's letting you see a little bit of it now. So you could thank it for that.
Huh. Let's see. somebody doesn't want me to thank the wall.
Yeah. Could ask what that's about.
It's about like, what right does this wall have to keep me from knowing myself and being at peace and having so much good transformation in my life? Like this wall needs to justify itself.
Yeah. Yeah. You can let that part know that that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah. And by us getting curious about this wall, it won't give it more power or kind of justify its actions. But it could help us understand why it's there.
Yeah, that is
and
very
what it's trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And see if that part wouldn't mind stepping out just for this conversation.
Yeah, the part is kind of like, as long as you figure it out.
Yeah, what would it like us to figure out exactly?
That's a good question. The part is like, look, if there is a good reason for the wall, then whatever. And there probably is, because there's always a good reason for parts doing what they do. But it's tired of stuff being in the way. It's just like tired of it. It's like, I want to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sees the frustration in that and like to get beyond it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can let it know we hear that. And I think it's got a lot of good points. Parts generally always have a good intention. And so we might figure out a little bit about what that intention is.
Yeah.
And then from there, we might be able to help both of these parts.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. To really understand them and see what they need.
Yeah.
So does it sound like this part would be willing to let us go towards that wall a little bit? And would it be okay if at some point we do appreciate the wall for its intention?
It seems like the part has stepped back a bit. So I would like to try to approach the wall again and see if that part has stepped back enough. And if not, can go back to it.
Perfect. Just invite that wall to notice you.
Okay.
See if it's willing to let you notice it a bit more.
I'm getting something from the wall that's like, if you can see me, then the purpose of me is defeated. And I don't know what that means, but that's very interesting.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. You mentioned earlier that it likes to be operating kind of covertly.
Yeah. Yeah, so I wonder what this secrecy is about. Like, why can it not be seen?
Yeah. Or what is it afraid would happen if it was?
If it's seen, then it can be broken into, I believe is what I'm getting, which makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Because I do have parts that would try to break through anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let it know you recognize the truth in that.
Yeah, that is very true. Like, it makes complete sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So far it's been pretty important that this part operates covertly or more, hidden.
Yeah. And it needs reassurance that it won't get broken into, which also makes sense. And yeah, I want to offer it that. And I
Yeah.
understand why my other parts feel like they have to break it, because like it feels like impossible to get past, and it feels like everything good is waiting on the other side. And so it feels just like this almost like not evil thing, but just like incredibly frustrating. So I
Right.
get that. But then I think the difference is I'm not really afraid like those parts are, that we're just not going to get anywhere with it. And so,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And that your goal now and here is not to skip past it or
Yeah.
push past it.
Yeah.
And you can recognize there's been a lot of parts that look at it in a negative sense or as a roadblock or something that gets in the way and that they have to shove past or push beyond, that
Yeah.
are always trying to kind of push it out of the way. So yeah, maybe
Yes.
share.
Yeah. Sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just going to say, just sharing that you can see a lot of truth in what it's saying, and you can understand why it would need to be assured of what your intention is here.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And the parts are kind of remembering the last time, like there's this part daughter who's responsible for a lot of the frustration, and then there's this other part that I call glass that sort of blankets everything and stops daughter, and daughter was so frustrated about this
Yeah.
for so long, and then she finally realized, I guess she got like a little bit of actual contact with glass or something, and realized that like the reason glass does that is because if she didn't, then daughter would just like drill into my system and make everyone bleed.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, well, shit. I guess
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Right.
So after that experience, my parts are kind of just like, and the big thing is that, and the two of them, when they had that sort of interaction realization, I just remember the sense of them like both chanting together in my head, like same goal, same goal, same goal, because they actually have the same goal. And that was cool. Yeah. So I guess my parts are a little more open to the idea that blocking parts would have the same goal as diving in parts.
Exactly. Yeah. That even parts that they've been in these really difficult, polarized, almost wars with,
Yeah.
they might actually be trying to get to the same thing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Glass's whole thing was like, I need to keep parts stable and healthy enough that there will be anything left of them when it is finally time to connect to them.
Right. That makes so much sense. And it sounds really similar to the type of protection a wall would offer.
Yeah, like I'm almost wondering if this is glass, but I'm really not sure yet.
Yeah, and that's okay. There can be lots of different iterations of that type of protection. And most important thing is just to understand it however it would like to be seen and understood. And
yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So, so it wants reassurance that it won't be broken into.
That's right.
Yeah. And I'm wondering what that would look like. Because I need to know, I think daughter needs to know exactly what she's not supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's kind of just a general like backing off. Like if like stop stop giving everybody a headache. Stop kind of like getting to the point where it's painful and trying to keep going anyway.
Yeah, and I just want to say she probably has a really good reason for doing that drilling.
Yes.
And, it's just the best way that she's found so far to continue her mission and her role.
Yes,
and
because her experience of stopping has usually just meant that nothing happens.
Right. So she's trying to prevent that, and we can understand that would be an important thing to prevent and to work against. So, yeah, I think what would be needed in getting to know this wall, as far as daughter is concerned, would really just be daughter's trust in you.
Yeah, that's right. Like, I think if she notices that things are getting painful, she can take in the fact that there might that pain is a sign that she's on the way to nothing happening, and that letting up would actually be sort of the only way that something might happen.
Yeah, and the only way she's going to be willing to let up is if she can trust that somebody else is going to be there to catch these parts.
Yeah, that's right. And so I'm wondering like what she needs from me in order to stop grinding.
Yeah.
She needs something. Yeah, like she needs something to feel different. Like if she's gonna let go, then she needs letting go to feel good and not just nihilistic and anhedonic.
Right. If she's going to let go, she doesn't want the other parts that feel completely hopeless and want to do nothing to take over. She wants self to be there to be present with these other parts and to be able to really hear them and see them and be curious about them.
And that kind of gets into where she thinks she has to be self, and she's skeptical. She is still skeptical that self is something that doesn't require her facilitation.
Yeah, and she could actually be right about that.
Yeah.
In the sense that I really do genuinely believe that we need both parts and self, and that is why we can't get rid of parts. That it is a system in that sense, and I think she's right that we need her as well.
Yeah, she is. I think. Yeah, she does tend to have like this I agree, like I think even when you're the most self-led you can possibly be, managers are still there sort of in the world helping you actually say the words to the other person and like sort of process the language in a sort of way.
Absolutely.
I think like everything is filtered through managers almost, and I don't think that's a bad thing. But I think daughter still doesn't quite understand how to do that role and not dip into what self is supposed to be doing. Like she doesn't understand where the line is.
Yeah, which is really understandable.
Yeah.
If we think about what her experience has been for a really long time, which was, there was a long stretch of time. I remember in our last conversation, she was sharing about, not being able to find self. And feeling really alone in that job of needing to keep it all together and be that support.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense that she would be curious now that we're entering this, new paradigm of working together in this way, and her having this support for her job and her intentions, that there would be questions and there would be like, where is this boundary, or how do we do this dance?
Yeah. Yeah. She's like, what is my job? And what am I supposed to do and what am I not supposed to do?
Yeah. And what's cool is that we can actually ask her what she would like to do with her energy.
That's true. That's true. Let's see. Well, there's no question she has a lot of energy for this.
Yeah.
She is very tired, but that's only because she has a massive amount of energy, but she is still working over capacity.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have to be.
Yeah, probably just familiar for her.
Yes, but she loves to work. And there's no doubt about that, even though she's tired.
Yeah.
So, but she wants to figure stuff out without it just being like blood, sweat, and tears to reach each little insight.
Right.
Yeah.
Less straining, efforting for each little thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she'd still really like to work and possibly even play. I often think play and work are really similar, can be very similar.
Yes. She wants work to feel more like play because she really does love to play in these concepts and these like the reason that she's called daughter is because my friend got into this state where she was like really in self, and I didn't really have a name for this part. And so my friend's self was like, she seems like a daughter to me. And I was like, that kind of works. I don't know why, but it kind of does. And then my friend was like, yeah, it's because she's like a daughter of God. Like she wants to follow the path and she wants to like be a good listener.
Yeah.
And serve someone or whatever. And that made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, that felt like she felt really seen in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she'd like to have more playfulness in her work.
Yes. And she'd like to feel like she has a legitimate use and a legitimate purpose and can do things that nobody else can do in the system, but also that she has help with the things that she can't do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And what do you think about that? She'd like to have her importance recognized and also not be alone in her task and in her roles. She'd like to be supported in that too.
Yes. I think that makes a lot of sense, but I can feel her kind of saying this doesn't make sense to me because I feel simultaneously like it's all on my shoulders and like I'm too stupid to handle any of it.
Yeah.
And she's confused.
Yeah, and it sounds like she's really stuck in a confusing place. Yeah, where she feels the weight of the world on her shoulders, but she also has this belief about herself that she might not be able to figure it all out.
Yeah, she's like, it's again this question of like, if self has to step in, then what am I for? And if self doesn't have to step in, then how do I make this happen on my own? And it's like this double-edged sword of like, if self comes in, then I'm useless, but if self doesn't come in, then I'm alone.
Yeah. And I just want to normalize how common it is for parts to really have that sort of black and white way of thinking about things. You know, that's really the perspective that they've been living from for a long time.
Yeah.
So we want to, I want to acknowledge that and respect that. And also invite her to consider that we can have both things being true, that self needs her and she needs self.
Yeah. That is a good way of putting it, because she very much likes the idea of like interdependence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But she wonders how can a divine sort of, I mean, it's not an omniscient being, so maybe that's something, but it is a being that's never really wrong about stuff. And she's like, how can I, like, what can I offer this creature that doesn't need anything from me?
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, it does need from her, self generally doesn't have much of an agenda.
Yeah.
And I think of that as like a big key difference between parts itself, where, our parts are generally agended. They do have certain intentions and goals and things they want to either avoid or go towards.
Yeah.
And self is really there to provide them that loving compassion and support for their missions. But I do think of these parts as like the parts of us that hold these intentions and missions and more agendaed goals. That need that loving guidance to get there.
Yeah.
But really have like a vision of their own and lots of ideas and
yeah. That does make sense, although I have heard that, like, I read, like, in No Bad Parts, it is talked about that self has a kind of agenda, but at the same time I see what you're saying, because parts have like unique agendas, whereas self's agenda is more like
broad and overarching.
Yeah, like a better universe, like a more compassionate way of life, whereas parts are creating something a bit more specific, I guess.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And I did have an insight once from self, like a very clear concept from self that life exists for the beauty of specificity.
Yeah.
So I guess it might be related to that. But it's still hard for daughter to wrap her mind around this idea that there isn't just one most perfect vision of the world that she's falling short of. Which is interesting. Because obviously there would never just be one most perfect vision.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to ask her, where does she get that idea?
Yeah.
And she's like, if there is perfection out there, then how can anything I do be as good as that? And I guess answer would be that what she's that oh God, it's hard to put into words.
Yeah, it's okay.
But it's like the fact that she is creating something different is what makes it perfect.
Hmm. Yeah, like she adds to that wholeness.
Yeah. And yeah, like the imperfection is perfect.
Yeah.
It's all just reduced down to like the cheesiest of platitudes.
Very meaningful ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what does she think about that?
She is like, she's like, I know that makes sense because I have literally just been thinking and writing so much about how much I love the world and how much I love life and existence, which has been like a really interesting and kind of surprising thing. To me. The more self energy I've gotten is just that is just how much my parts fucking love the world and like everything.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, I do too. And it's self loves that. Self is like, that's why I love you, because you love this place.
Yeah.
So that's been really nice. But I still feel this wall. I feel like I'm like circling around it.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's something that still feels like muted or dampened or something. It's like I know this stuff, but I don't know it. Like some part of me doesn't know it yet.
Yeah. And how is that to just pause and recognize?
I feel glad that I can even recognize it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I feel like it could slip by unnoticed, and it has many times.
Yeah, like it mentioned, that's how it is able to operate. That if it showed itself, it would be overpowered.
Yeah. So it feels good to recognize it. And aside from that good feeling, it also feels just really numb. Again, it feels like nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And would it make sense to say that that's kind of where daughter might come in sometimes, is to get you out of that nothing feeling?
Yeah, I think that's what she's been trying to do for a really long time, she sees all these things happening and she's like, we could be feeling all of this, but we're not. And why aren't we?
Yeah. 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 It sounds like they have been in kind of close proximity to each other for a really long time, of, you know, the wall being this sort of safe, stops the drilling too far, stops anything touching too deep in a way that might hurt.
Yeah.
And daughter wanting to push you to understand more and to do more.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she asks an interesting question. She's like, why can't we just feel? Why can't we just have these feelings? What is so bad about them? Because not having them has been so bad. So what is so bad about them that we're willing to suffer like this just to not have them?
Yeah. And that might be something that the wall could answer. What would be so bad about feeling those feelings that it protects?
I am very curious about that. Let's see.
And relating that from self so that it is reassured that our intention in understanding that is not to push past it.
Yeah.
But really to understand its fears or its concerns of what would be so scary about feeling those feelings that it protects.
Yeah, because I understand how up until this point it actually would have been really scary and overwhelming because self really wasn't allowed in for a long time. But I think what daughter is frustrated by is like, okay, like we have some now, so what's the deal? And what's frustrating to her is just that there's just so little information that she feels like there's no way to even get more. So she's very frustrated. But I guess I can, like, how can she? So on the other side of it, I understand that, like, why would I expect this wall part to just suddenly completely change its strategy after years and years and years of protecting me from these scary emotions? Like that wouldn't really.
And that we might not want it to, right? Like I could see the importance of wanting to understand its concerns first before asking it to change anything.
Yeah, that's very true because there have been some very, very scared parts hidden in there that I've gotten glimpses of.
Yeah. So
sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah, we might not exactly know if it needs to change and shift or what exactly it would need to change or shift, but we would really like to understand what it can see, the importance that it sees in protecting in the ways that it does.
That's true. It's like we don't know what we don't know about it. And so we don't need to assume that everything's fine just because everything feels fine. Because the reason it feels fine to go deeper could be because this part is protecting us from
Totally. Absolutely. It might be doing its job really well.
Yeah, I suspect
titrate.
That's exactly what's happening, actually.
Yeah, we could thank it for that. That sounds like a really important role.
Yeah, we could thank it for that. Let's see if I can contact it enough to even thank it.
Yeah, and that can be just a general putting it out there.
Yeah.
You see the importance of kind of titrating the emotional experience.
Yeah. It's certainly doing its very best. That's kind of the feeling that because I feel very strongly a presence of daughter being like, oh yeah, duh, like I get where I was wrong. But what's actually coming from self, I think, is this idea of like it's really doing its best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah.
And you're beginning to understand a little bit of its importance.
Yeah. And it's still pretty quiet, and I would like to experience the quiet with it or see what the quiet means to it.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm getting that it means that it's like a stable base for everything else that I do. And everything that daughter has been able to do and that she's been able to feel and enjoy has in a way been because of this part leveling things out so that the exiles aren't just constantly like crashing into every moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A stable base for everything else to
Yeah.
do what it does.
Yeah. So it is trying to help us feel, because if it didn't do what it does, we would only be feeling distress.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So its importance is in creating that stable base.
Yeah.
So that the feelings aren't too much.
Yes.
Yeah. You could ask if it feels right, how long it's been doing that job.
Okay. Seems like a very long time.
Yeah.
Seems like almost since I can remember, and the word that's coming up with it is shame.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it kept shame small, because when something would happen that would upset me and make me feel bad, it would keep me from making the situation worse by throwing a fit about it.
Mm-hmm.
It helped me keep things in so that at least I appeared calm and could control myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes sense to you?
It does. It makes a lot of sense, but it's kind of weird. Like, I almost don't even know how I'm getting these things, like, because it feels like they make sense, but the feeling of it in my body is still almost nothing. And so, like, if I didn't know better, I would think that I was just kind of making this up and intellectualizing it, but I don't think that's the case.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
it doesn't make so much sense. But just the presence of this part is just so like invisible and slippery. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And is it okay that it presents that way, that it wants to communicate in this way that might be a little different than what you're used to?
I think it's really wonderful that it's able to communicate.
Yeah.
Even though it has such a small presence, I think I have a part that is worried that it's not enough, but I mean, it seems like it's going fine so far. So I just want to
Yeah.
keep going, I guess.
Yeah. And you can recognize that part that, might be worried, and you could invite it to maybe step into a safe space behind you.
Yeah.
Just recognize its concerns and thank it for looking out.
Yeah, and what I can tell it is that even if I am somehow making this up, then that's probably not the worst thing in the world. Anyway, like, it's not going to be a catastrophe if that is.
Yeah, I mean, it's all coming from you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Some part of you. So it is real in that sense.
That's true.
Yeah. And it might not all make sense immediately, but so far, everything this part has said has made a lot of sense to you.
Yeah. Yes. It has it's like the feeling of not when you feel like you're a burden, you don't want to compound that by making a fuss about how you feel like a burden. And
Right.
that's kind of the idea here.
Right. Yeah. So it was saying that it's been doing this a very long time, and then some memories came or some feelings came of keeping shame small to not make things worse.
Yeah, some memories of like being like a preschooler and feeling like I was like feeling very shy in general, and the old memory of like noticing that my dad was tired when I was a baby and stuff like that, and just feeling nervous about whether I was behaving okay.
Right. Right. And keeping certain emotions or feelings, shame being one of them, but I'm sure there's more. You know,
The
keeping
word fear,
what's that?
the word fear also just came up for me. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Keeping certain emotions like shame or fear at a certain stable base so that it didn't make things worse, so that the tantrum, I think it used the word of how we were feeling, didn't cause more issues.
Yes. Yeah, and that part has done some impressive stuff. Like I remember I had this really really cranky professor in art school who would kind of just tear into everybody. And one day he was looking at my homework, tearing into me. And some students would cry sometimes, or he would just get really under everybody's skin. And I just remember standing there feeling really gutted by the experience of him ripping into my work and just keeping a completely straight, flat, unaffected face and being like, okay, and being really proud of myself that I did not let him know one bit of how he was affecting me, because I was like, I got to not give him the satisfaction, and that was everything.
Right. Right. Yeah, this part had to work really hard in that instance.
Yeah.
To not let too much emotion come out.
Yeah. I think what I want this part to understand is that what it's doing is really valuable, but it can be really confusing to other parts because they're like, where did the emotions go? We can't find them. And they panic.
Yeah.
And I think that part knows that.
You could check it out with that part. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And just want to tell it like they don't know where the emotions went.
Yeah. And could it see how that might be a little confusing for some of them?
I'm getting a kind of like, oh, from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I might not have thought about that. It had a really important role to focus on.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's interesting. That's kind of the most bodily response that I've gotten so far, and it's still very light.
Yeah.
But it is kind of like this rising in my gut of like, huh.
Yeah. And just welcome that part to be with you in this way.
Yeah, I'm really like happy that it moved. I'm like proud of it for moving.
Yeah. Yeah, and you recognize the importance of its job and how long and how hard it's been working.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. You could ask this part what it would be afraid of happening if it didn't keep shame and fear and these big emotions at bay.
They would just get everywhere and they would spook the other parts. And then everybody would be going crazy.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel like you understand what it means by that?
Yes, because daughter, whenever she sees an emotion, she tries to solve it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if she had this dire situation that she had to solve all the time, she would just be insane all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it comes in and stops
Yeah.
daughter from having to do that drilling all the time.
Yeah, and it kind of enables her to like, because she's also driven crazy when she knows she's not able to be logical. So if she's driven by emotion, then she can't actually think anything through like she thinks she's supposed to.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So it's that solid base of like
Mm-hmm.
I'm calm enough to figure out what I need to do, kind of thing.
Yeah, they almost work together in that way.
They
Sounds
do.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so if this part didn't do those things, then other parts would get overwhelmed, daughter would get overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And what would be so bad about that, just to kind of continue that inquiry?
Like there really would be like a very slim hope of a solution because we would all just be like everybody just be running around with their head cut off like forever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like we wouldn't ever be able to actually figure out what to do, and it would just be like a self of like a cycle.
Yeah. And what would that feel like? Ask this part if it would be willing to share what that would feel like, or what would it be afraid that would feel like?
Let's see. If you let the emotions free. And what would happen? Or what would it feel like? It would just be constant uncertainty. And I already struggle so much with uncertainty, even with the level of emotions that I currently deal with. I am constantly uncertain. So it's afraid of
More of that.
being driven mad by uncertainty. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense why it would want to prevent that.
Yeah.
And you could take a moment just to notice how you're feeling towards this part as it shares what it's been sharing with us.
I would say I feel anxious that it's I still feel like very much like where did the emotions go, and kind of like a suspicion about that, or a like a yeah, confusion.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking like I was kind of having this little dialogue in my head a second ago of like, could there be an arrangement worked out where the parts where like daughter and company don't try to dig and mine and grate on this wall or any other part in exchange for if the wall will just like maybe let us know what, like if it can just be like, yeah, I'm the one hiding the emotions so that everybody doesn't just get confused. And
Yeah.
so I wonder if that could be some kind of compromise.
Yeah. Well, you could definitely check that out with the wall. If it was able to express what emotions it wanted to keep at bay and why.
Mm-hmm.
And if it could trust that that information would be heard and respected.
It's kind of like if other parts are feeling really, really confused and like, why can't I do anything? And like, why is everything stopped? If like this part, it didn't even have to like explain why, but it could just be like, yeah, that's me. I'm doing that.
Mm-hmm.
That would be really, really great. And I think that the confused parts would be a lot more willing to settle down if they just knew like where it was coming from.
Yeah. And how does that sound to this wall, that has felt like it had to operate in the shadows for a long time and not call itself out?
I think if it can really be allowed to say that without the other parts requiring more of it than that, then there might be a way. Like if the other parts can trust self for everything beyond that one thing of like, oh, it's me.
Yeah.
I feel like it's something that my system can at least sit with and kind of contemplate, like not necessarily fully agree to the compromise right now, but it's something we can kind of like
Experiment
and work on over time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that would be a great agreement with this part, even just for today. Could we be open to thinking more about that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think daughter already kind of feels a little reassured because she's like, well, if something's happening, now I do kind of know where to look.
Right. Now that we understand the dynamic between them and how they almost work together in certain ways.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the reason that wall part was going, oh, and seemed kind of interested is because I think it didn't realize that just knowing that it was doing something would make the other parts calm down.
Yeah.
It didn't realize that anything except total opening up would make them chill out. But they really just want to know, like kind of like
that it's there when it's there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't need everything to be solved like immediately. I mean, like daughter sometimes has that need, but it's not like, she can work with it.
Yeah. Yeah, they can have more trust that the wall won't be the end all be all forever existence, that they could recognize that it's there to provide this stable base and let self go to it to find out the rest or to be with it in the ways that it needs, but that all these other parts want to know is just that reassurance that that's where the emotions went, or that's what's going on.
That there's something going on at all, and that my system isn't just this blank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense why that would be scary to them.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense to me based on my past as well, because I've dealt with like a number of people, especially in my childhood, like who did feel like blank walls to me. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't get anything out of trying to communicate with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that could even be this part, sharing some more information with you about it and where it sort of picked up some of its coping mechanisms or beliefs or strategies.
Yeah, I am curious to talk to it about why it might be like recreating that dynamic, because that is really, really interesting and probably makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. You could let it know that you would really love to get to know it more in this way.
Yeah, I would.
And if it feels right, you could ask if it would like to keep in touch with you any certain way or how it would like to communicate that message of, yeah, it's me. That's what's going on.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it wants to know that it'll be respected,
Mm-hmm.
because part of it not being seen was also that the other parts didn't want to see it, didn't want it to be there, so they were acting like it wasn't there.
Yeah, they were looking at it as a bad thing,
Yeah.
mostly.
Yeah, or like as just some kind of like inhuman block, like an actual wall instead of a part. So like
Right.
being dehumanized kind of from both sides in a way.
Yeah, and what you discovered about it today was that it actually wasn't against feeling in general, that it was really just trying to titrate that experience so that it wasn't making things worse, that those big feelings wouldn't cause more harm.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Huh. It's interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
for all your help with this.
Absolutely. And thank you to daughter for what she shared with us today and this wall part. I mean, they both really did a beautiful job and you did a beautiful job of sharing the space.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to learn a lot about how they work together or in the ways that they interact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I do feel like I learned a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and then going forward, we can experiment with what that wall part might need to sort of let itself be seen a bit when it's in action, and how it might do that in a safe way that reassures parts rather than shuts any of them out or confuses them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be great. I'd love that.
Yeah. Nice. Any questions for me or any closing thoughts?
I don't think so. Just thank you again. You
Yeah.
were very helpful, and I'm really looking forward to next time.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, that sounds good to me. I'll be in touch with the recording if that's something you like. I think you do like that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I don't I don't know. I don't necessarily usually even bother to check it or anything, but if you yeah, no, I'm happy to receive it. It's
Cool.
probably a
Yeah.
good thing for me too in any case.
Yeah. I guess it's always nice to have the option if you ever do want to re-listen.
Exactly.
So
It's nice to have the option.
totally.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Olivia. I'll send that and yeah, look forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Do you want to help bring more self-energy to the world? If you'd like to participate in calls or help out with this project in any way, I'd love to hear your ideas. Join the Discord server or contact me at james@liveifs.com. A huge thanks to our audio engineer, Yvonne, for your care and diligence in editing the calls. To every caller for your courage in sharing some of your parts. And to anyone out there getting to know their internal system, keep going. Who knows, that might be the most selfless, helpful thing you can do for others, and you're the only one who can do it. If you'd like to see us reach the largest audience, we must please the almighty suggestion algorithms at iTunes and YouTube. And they don't care about the power of IFS. They're looking for likes and shares and comments, and the sooner the better. Follow the links in the show notes right here in your podcast player to make your wishes known. And now, a minute of meditation. Or if you prefer, pull over. You can do it in 60 seconds. Just click one of those links. They're right there, and give us a like or a 5-star rating. It would really help. If you think this project is helping people, you're helping people by sharing it. Thank you.